Over the past year, the world has been reminded of one uncomfortable reality. Modern conflicts are not won by missiles alone. They are won by satellites, communications networks, and navigation systems. Every drone needs to know exactly where it is. Every precision strike depends on real-time positioning data. Every military convoy moving through unfamiliar terrain relies on a signal coming from space. Now ask yourself one question. What happens if the country you are fighting controls the satellites guiding your own weapons? That is not a hypothetical. That is the question China asked itself in the 1990s, when its military leaders watched American forces use GPS-guided precision weapons during the Gulf War and understood something that changed their entire strategy. The country that controls navigation controls a layer of the modern world that most people never think about. And China spent 30 years building an answer. It is called BeiDou. Most people have never heard of it. 1.4 billion devices already run on it. And in 2023, the United States government's own advisory board on GPS, the system America invented, concluded something it had never said before. GPS capabilities are now substantially inferior to those of China's BeiDou. Not a Chinese official, not Chinese state media, America's own government, about its own system. This week, China revealed what comes next. America's satellite network, the global positioning system, built in the 1970s for the United States military, had by then become the standard for how the world navigated. Ships, planes, emergency services, farming equipment, all of them running on a signal broadcast from American satellites. All of them dependent on a decision made in Washington. And the United States military had already demonstrated it was willing to use that control. China's response was not immediate. It was patient. Development of what would become BeiDou began in 1993. The first satellites launched in 2000. By 2012, Beijing's alternative covered the Asia-Pacific region. By July 31, 2020, China became only the third country in history to operate an independent global satellite navigation system, when BeiDou 3 completed its constellation and began providing full global service. Today, 50 satellites operate across 3 types of orbits. The system's official positioning accuracy, available to any civilian user anywhere in the world, reaches better than 30 centimeters horizontally through its precision service. Its timing error is less than 20 nanoseconds, 20 billionths of a second. For military and authorized government users, that accuracy reaches 10 centimeters. Accuracy is the part of this story most people focus on. It is not the most important part. Beijing's alternative has 3 capabilities that America's satellite network has never had, and understanding all 3 is what separates a navigation story from a power story. The first is two-way communication. America's satellite network is a one-way system. Satellites broadcast, receivers listen, nothing travels back. China's navigation system works differently. It includes a built-in messaging capability. Receivers can send and receive short messages directly through the satellite network, without any mobile coverage, without any ground-based infrastructure, without any third-party network. A ship at sea beyond all mobile range. A response team in a location where every communication line has been cut. A device in an area where networks have been deliberately disabled. All of them can still communicate through China's satellite system. The second is resistance to jamming. America's satellite network operates on a single frequency. Jamming that frequency, broadcasting a stronger signal on the same band to overwhelm it, is a technique that has been used extensively across multiple conflict zones in recent years. Reports from several active theaters of operation over the past 12 months documented GPS signals being disrupted across wide areas, affecting civilian aviation, shipping, and military navigation simultaneously. Beijing's alternative operates across multiple frequency bands at once, using anti-interference technology designed specifically to continue functioning when individual frequencies are targeted. Disabling one frequency does not disable the system. The former director of French foreign intelligence, Alain Juillet, noted in March 2026 that the resistance of China's navigation system to electronic countermeasures was not a marginal improvement over GPS. It was a fundamentally different capability, one with direct and observable consequences in environments where GPS jamming had become standard practice. The third is independence. America's satellite network is controlled by the United States military. Any country, company, military, or individual that depends on it is dependent on a decision made in Washington. For 50 years, most of the world accepted that dependency because there was no alternative. Think carefully about what those 3 features mean together. Two-way messaging that works when every other communication line is cut. Multi-frequency operation that continues when individual bands are jammed. And complete independence from control by any foreign government. These are not not features designed for finding a restaurant. They are features designed for the conditions where navigation matters most, when everything else has failed, when the signal is being attacked, and when depending on another country's infrastructure is no longer an option. For 50 years, the world had one answer to those conditions, and it came from Washington. That is changing, and 1.4 billion devices have already made the switch. Building a satellite network is one thing. Getting the world to use it is a completely different challenge. For decades, America's satellite network had an enormous head start. It was already embedded in smartphones. Airlines depended on it. Shipping companies trusted it. Governments had built decades of critical infrastructure around it. Switching away is not a simple decision, and China understood that. So China's answer was not just technology, it was partnerships. Over the past several years, China signed cooperation agreements with countries across Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America to integrate its navigation system into transportation, agriculture, disaster response, and communications infrastructure. These agreements are documented by the Jamestown Foundation, an independent American research organization that has tracked BeiDou's global adoption in detail. The combined output of chips, software, equipment, and infrastructure built around Beijing's navigation system reached 170 billion yuan in 2024 alone. But here is the point that matters beyond the statistics. Infrastructure creates long-term dependency. When a country builds its transportation systems, its emergency services, its supply chains, and its communications infrastructure around a particular satellite network, switching away later is not easy. That is true whether the system is American or Chinese. It is simply what infrastructure does. It shapes the future of whoever depends on it. That is why what is happening right now is not just a technology story. It is a story about which systems countries choose to build their futures around. And those choices, made quietly, sector by sector, determine who holds the kind of influence that is invisible until it matters most. Remove satellite navigation from the modern world, and the modern world stops functioning. That is the scale of what is being discussed when two countries are competing for dominance in this space. On July 13, 2026, 1 week ago, China held a national symposium marking 30 years since BeiDou's development began in 1993. For the first time, officials publicly revealed the full roadmap for what comes next. 3 experimental next-generation satellites launch around 2027. Full network deployment begins around 2029. The next-generation system reaches completion by 2035. Yang Changfeng, the chief designer of the entire BeiDou system, described it as a system that would deliver real-time positioning and timing precision for all public users, extending coverage from the Earth's surface to the depths of outer space. But China is not waiting for 2035. This year, engineers began upgrading satellites already in orbit, delivering software and parameter improvements directly to spacecraft circling the Earth, without launching new hardware. Think of it like a software update pushed to a phone, except the phone is in orbit 36,000 kilometers above the planet. 7 older second-generation satellites are being retired. The remaining constellation is being updated to improve accuracy and service continuity. Users, the China Satellite Navigation Office stated, will not notice any interruption. And the system being upgraded is already the centerpiece of something larger. China is building a low Earth orbit satellite internet constellation planned for 13,000 satellites, designed to integrate directly with BeiDou, creating a unified navigation, communication, and connectivity network with no current equivalent outside the United States. SpaceX's Starlink, the largest satellite internet constellation currently in operation, runs approximately 7,000 satellites. China's planned constellation is nearly twice that size. This is no longer a story about building a better GPS. It is a story about building an entire ecosystem in space. Navigation, communications, timing, and internet connectivity, all working together, all independent of American infrastructure, all being built, upgraded, and expanded right now. Over the past year, the world has seen what happens when the technology infrastructure behind modern operations becomes a target. Navigation, communications, timing, connectivity. These are not conveniences. They are the foundations of how the modern world functions, and increasingly, how it competes. For 50 years, whoever controlled navigation helped shape the modern world. The next 50 years may be remembered as the moment that monopoly ended. Whether that changes everything or changes very little is a story we are only beginning to watch unfold. If this gave you a clearer picture of what BeiDou actually is and why it matters far beyond finding directions, hit the like button. It takes 1 second and it directly determines how many people this video reaches. Most people had no idea that the United States government's own advisory board had already concluded its satellite system was substantially inferior to China's. That is exactly the kind of story this channel is built to tell, without hype, without politics, just verified facts and the bigger picture. Subscribe if you want more. Every video on this channel covers the technology developments reshaping the world, explained in language that does not require a technical background. We will see you in the next one.